Shall we begin? I shall call us to order. Has anything monumental happened in your life that, for good or ill, that you would like to share with the group before we start? Anybody else pregnant? Anybody? Liz?
I'm not pregnant.
Oh,
My husband's retiring on Saturday.
Oh, wow.
and you're happy.
Well, I don't know how to react to that yet. I've lived by myself for 5 years, so having him home will be an adjustment. But he's doing it. He deserves it. He's worked for 50 years and he's tired. So he's coming home.
Right.
Yeah. So that's my news.
Allison, glad to have you with us this week. I know you were busy last in April. But
Couldn't get my head on straight and forgot that it was the week of our meeting. So sorry about that.
Well, it just gets worse as you get older, I'm afraid. Anybody else? Okay. I asked Kim to give our opening statement tonight. Kim's not here, won't be here. So I shall try to be the substitute. Being the lazy person that I am, I went into my minister wife's office and grabbed a book of prayers. These apparently were submitted in the year 2000 by the Episcopal Council of Women's Ministries. So it's 300 so pages of prayers sent in by 400 or so different people. And they started off kind of innocuous and safe. And I thought, oh, well, anybody could read that one out loud and not worry about anybody thinking anything. And no one would remember. But after a while, they started getting a little more personal. And I found one I liked that I'm going to read to you now. And then just went ahead and read the next one. And it's called Prayer for an Abused Child. I went, oh, it has taken a turn for the dark. And there was another one that asked God where the hell he was when she was being abused by her father. I went, oh, now we're getting into some really serious stuff. And then it goes into all sorts of other stuff. So started off slow, but it's really picked up. But I like this one because of the ordinariness of it. And this is kind of an ordinary time. And if you've been at home for 12 months, 14 months, you've done a lot of ordinary things. This is called Sunday Night Tub Cleaning by the Reverend Marianne Aiken. Don't know where she's from. Lord, how is it I find you, even in cleaning the bathtub? I sling my body over its side, such an awkward position. And then I realize that simultaneously I am on my knees. Down into this cavern, one hand bracing and the other scrubbing. We create strange postures in our lives lived before you. I look around and know that I do not plunge myself inside other things to clean them. There is simple delight in transforming the scum into bubbles. I do this part. And then the flow of water carries away my effort and reveals the wondrous shine of porcelain. It's merely me on the sides of this tub, my dirt that I try to wash away. How odd the effort to send my many layers down the drain. How disgusted I become with my scum when I see it. Yet you stand ready, loving God, to release me from this burden. You come with a mighty rush of living waters to complete the task. Or you appear in the quiet trickle. Your water as beginning to make the lather. Your water as cleansing to make me sparkle in your light's reflection. Fresh and new, this clean vessel, restoring waters, ready to provide the warmth and calm of a late night bubble bath. A gift of grace to take me into rest and tomorrow. Well, we have some ordinary things we need to do tonight. So let's attend to the business of the church that we were elected to do. You received, I hope, a PDF with all of our agenda on it. So I'll ask for a motion that we approve the consent agenda unless somebody here wants to add to the agenda or subtract from it. I should give you a moment to think about that. Okay, your consent agenda contains the April 27th minutes, As always, executive limitation number 4, the dashboard, any questions on the dashboard or the monthly financial statement, which goes through April 30th, and then a treasurer's report. Carol Westfall, are you talking to me or someone else in the room?
I move the adoption of the consent agenda.
And the rest of the agenda too, or does that matter? Okay,
We're only talking about the consent agenda right now.
well, I kind of brought up both of them, but we'll nail that down. Liz will nail that down when she's moderator. So there's been a motion
I'll second.
and no one has objected to the consent agenda. All in favor? Great. Starting with the business. Last, are you voting? Or are you holding up your hand? Okay. We talked about the different ways the UCC examines and then ordains its future ministers last time. Alex she can see the finish line out there in front of her. It's almost there. 2 little things have to happen according to the association. One is this group, preferably tonight, will approve the job description that is in your packet. I don't know if you can pull that up, Carol, or let me share my screen or whatever. Which would you rather? Carol Hainsey, I think you're the host.
I do not have it, but I can get it so you can share your screen.
Okay.
Hold
I can share my
on.
screen. Does everybody else have it? I can just tell you what page is on, if that helps.
I'm having some challenges here. It's not letting you. Can you share your screen now?
Let's see. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Don't we all have it in front of us with the consent
Mine.
agenda that you
You all
sent
have it?
out?
Okay.
Yvonne?
It comes right after all the items in the consent agenda. It's on page 17.
17.
17.
Okay.
You can try now, Phil. You might be able to.
Well, it's a few pages long, so it has some changes from when it was her job description, or what her job description is today. Major changes include number 11 under essential duties.
Can I back up to the very top to the header,
Of course.
the job classification? This says this job is non-exempt. Is that true?
I don't know.
I would expect a ministerial job to be exempt.
That would be my expectation too.
Yeah, that's an old hangover from the last one, Carol.
Okay, so that should be changed to exempt.
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
That's
Now I'm
Thanks.
ready.
No, that's a good catch.
thank
Now
you.
I'm ready for details.
And I will say that at least Harry and Heidi have seen this, and they're waiting on Vicky, the 3rd member of the HR committee. Do you want me to try one more time? To share. Oh, look. Which one is it? Can anybody see that?
Yes.
You see the job description? Okay. So Carol was just talking about that. We're going to delete that X and move it over here. And I was about to talk about the changes to number 11, which is got some new stuff in it. She will provide worship leadership of the word and sacrament through services, prayers. Probably should be a comma after service. Services, prayers, communion, children's time, and occasional preaching. Provides over memorial services when asked. Those were not in her job description before. The communion and the memorial services, I think the occasional preaching was. All right, by adopting this, again, Carol, are you talking to me or are you?
Well, I keep hitting the button and
Sorry.
my iPad doesn't recognize my touch.
That's fine.
The anal retentive person in me asked, shouldn't there be a comma after services?
Yes, there should.
And I would put a comma after children's time because I use the Oxford comma, but not everybody agrees with that.
That's old school. But yes,
Patty, you getting all this? We're gonna have to fix it before we put the packet together for the congregation in the first week of June. No.
I request a point of personal privilege. I think I need to get my 1916 Kittredge and Farley classical grammar to bring here to the table.
Just one,
I use, Bob, I use Strunk and White elements of style,
one
which
thing,
my dad used when he was at Columbia in the 1940s.
Yeah. Does anybody have something from the 70s or later? David?
yeah, just one thing. I didn't see anything in here where she collaborates with Eric so that the children's ministry feeds into, provides a foundation or transition to the youth program. That's an old youth person talking.
Well, would you like to
And I'm just
maybe,
thinking being an integrated, so they don't all of a sudden get to youth group and,
yeah, that's a good point. So it has Christian Education Committee, which is usually like an overarching term
right?
instead of specific. So we can add in there a specific because we're not really organized in a Christian Ed committee that oversees youth. So it's probably a good place to add it.
Yeah.
That's a good call. Can you scroll back up for a second, Phil? It's on number 3 there. Yeah, so we can add that right.
number 3 and number 5 might be combined together with what David is talking about, if you want.
Yeah,
About the collegiality there, which is what he's
yeah,
talking about.
and comprehensive Christian. Yeah, I think just naming it sounds good. So I'll look at that again
Yeah, I'm just
and find a good place.
right. It never happened, but where kids would come into middle school and senior high, and all of a sudden we're saying God is dead, and
Right.
they
It
didn't.
needs to be.
Right. That the foundation, it just wasn't. It'll be fine.
Yeah,
I
that's
have
good. I
one
think
more. Sorry.
5 is probably a good. 5 kind of says it, but we can take it to a specific so that it's not lost in there. So yeah, thank you for that. Sorry.
I have
Jenny,
one more copy editing comment. The senior minister suddenly became the senior pastor in item 12.
Definitely.
Could I ask a question, Jenny, or I guess Jenny?
Yeah.
Is she aware of the commitments to preaching, memorial services, et cetera?
Yeah. So the thing about that is she's already sort of been doing a lot of these things that weren't in her job description, memorial service preaching. So we just made it kind of formal. And so, yeah, she's kind of gone over this too.
Okay.
But those have been in there, but have been unarticulated. And so it's more formal, which really meets the requirements of the ordainable call. They don't have to be in there, but when you write word and sacrament is the key word for ordainable
Right.
call with a conference. And those things / communion, baptisms, memorial, those things reflect that word and sacrament. So yes, she is, but they weren't in there before. She just performed them.
Okay.
So I have a question. Are you going to combine number 3 and 5, or are you just going to change the wording in number 5?
We're just going to change the wording in 5. I'm just
Okay.
going to add something more specific about youth and leave 3 as is.
Okay.
And I
Thanks,
think
Pat.
what will happen is that Jenny's going to rewrite what she just said, and then we're going to change number 12. We're going to put a comma in right in there, number
Terms of-
11. And then we'll look at it together one more time. We'll send it back to the HR committee. And then once it's
Okay.
polished to Carol Westfall's specifications, it will go into the packet, which the congregation will see on June 13th. And we will ask them to extend a call to Alex. I guess we need a motion tonight to do that.
Phil,
We'll get that in a second. After we finish the job description, we'll deal with that motion.
Phil, I'd
Yes,
like to
Bob.
go to bullet number 7 under essential duties. I wondered if you're going to change number 5, if you might want to consider provides pastoral care and support to children and add youth and families in there. And what I'm thinking is I could foresee instances of certain family dilemmas where she may be called upon to provide some type of pastoral support and comfort and care to youth, not just the children.
Yeah, for her specifically, so Eric is the youth minister and she's the children's minister. So probably it would carry over, but the primary duty responsibility would be children for Alex. So yeah, I think it would be like you're saying, Bob, it would expand to a family, but because her primary responsibility would be to children through 5th grade. And then Eric, of course, is 6th grade through 12th. It's that way because of the specification of the duty and responsibility, not because she wouldn't provide it to another child in the family. Does that make sense?
It does. Let me ask you another question. Let's say that something happened and we didn't have a pastor or a youth director. Would some of those responsibilities by default fall back to her until one was secured?
It would depend on the configuration. Right now, it would be to Anthony for another couple of days. And then again, the minister of congregational care would be second to the senior pastor. So at that point, if there is no minister to congregational care, it would be in conjunction with the children's director or the youth minister. So yes, all of them, all the directors currently soon, right, with Alex, will be ordained clergy. So that's sort of, that's actually more of definer in terms of the breadth of the ministry of pastoral care, offering services beyond a director. An ordained minister would offer and be able to step in to offer pastoral care versus if it was a director, then another minister, even if it's not in their purview, would step in. But yeah, those are great questions.
Okay. Any question on the essential duties before we move on to the job qualifications? 1 through 12. Anybody have a question on 1 through 12? Okay, then the job qualifications are not numbered, so you'll have to tell me which bullet you're talking about if you have a question. I have questioned the next to last one with the HR committee, and I think they're going to change it. It says here, climb a ladder. And I'm trying to imagine Karen Guy and Noni Guy start climbing ladders. And I don't think we asked them to do that. Alex probably could, but I have asked that that's a little too specific for this because I can't think of why she has to. And change it to be able to lead children to safety in case of an emergency. I think it would be proper to expect our children's minister to be able to help kiddos escape to the fire escape or whatever. But climb a ladder. Harry thought maybe that was inadvertently copied over from a maintenance person's job description. All right. Any other besides that's my turn to be animal lieutenant. Core competencies, mission ownership, self-development, and team orientation. There you go, David. We got the team again.
Phil, could I go return again to job qualifications, the first point?
Mm-hmm.
Did the folks who created this document, did they consider a minimum amount of experience to be recorded as a requirement for employment? Or would they consider that not important?
I don't know who they are or who originally wrote the document, so I cannot answer that. Carol, were you around back then?
I don't think we would want to specify how many years specifically of demonstrated experience. I think the hiring team needs to have some flexibility in evaluating not just the length of the experience, but the intensity of the experience in deciding whether or not a master's degree is not necessarily required. And I would comment about climbing a ladder. If you've seen the Christian Education Resource Room and reaching and bending without difficulty, that's probably why that's in there.
Well, if it's necessary, then we should leave it in.
Yeah, the bigger thing is the ability to lift 50 pounds in case you have to pick up a kid and carry them to
Pretty
safety.
big kid, yeah. Those kind of things I tend to leave to the HR experts who keep up with the changes in the disability laws, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, your copy editor is going to say that there's periods at the end of some of these items and not at the end of some of the other ones.
Darn. I did not write this job description. I'm just here to pass. Okay.
Carol, I love the way you think because I always notice those tiny things as well. So I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Obviously, the second bullet is added, is new, ordination desired. All right, any other comments? Okay, core competencies. They probably apply to all of our ministers, at least the first three. This one applies to the minister of children. Maybe they all do. All righty. That's the job description. Does anybody have any concerns about extending a call to Alex Wright to be the Minister of Children and Family? Speak now. So what I'm going to recommend is that we make these corrections that we've just discussed, send it back to the HR committee and say, this is what the council would like to approve. Do you see any legal problems with it? Particularly this one. That's what they're good at. And get it back to everybody before the June 13th church meeting. And then at the June 13th, one of the agenda items of that meeting will be for the congregation to extend a call to Alex Wright to fill this job as spelled out in this job description. And then the minutes of this meeting and the minutes of that meeting on June 13th will be sent to the conference. And I think that's it. I think she's good to go when those two things happen.
Phil, is there a legal, like a childcare thing that would have to go in job qualifications that she should have taken, or maybe she already has? Is there something that we make our, for instance, our school teachers have at the Learning Center?
Like background checks, you mean, like that kind of thing?
Yeah, but is there some sort of training by the state that's mandatory for dealing with children?
Liz, there is, if you are specifically a teacher or a director level in a licensed childcare facility. But I do not see that there would be one for this position.
But we could perhaps add in something about boundary training, which is what the church requires.
I kind of feel like that's missing, and I'm not sure what we demand of the Learning Center people, but to me, it should be pretty similar.
Yeah, this position is over it. She oversees the whole process for the church and teachers. But yeah, that seems, that I haven't really gone through a lot of hiring yet at First Plymouth, but traditionally, in my former congregations and a lot of UCC churches, you have a policy from the insurance board, and then you adopt like a safe church policy. And for hiring purposes, anyone who deals with minors has to go through X from either the insurance board or the YMCA's Light to Darkness program. That usually happens on the HR side for all employees. But we could, Carol, do we have that in our HR policies?
I don't think we have it explicitly set out in the HR policies, but Alex may have it set out in her department's policies.
Okay.
But certainly we require that anyone interacting with the children or the youth has to go through that boundary training.
Including her now?
Yes,
Taking it within
Well,
the last year?
she's already had it.
And the
But
conference, to what Liz, to your point, this is the conference, like, so her ordination, our ordinations are held in the conference, right? They're authorized by the conference, not the local church. So we have to go through these kinds of things on, I don't know if I'm not sure about Rocky Mountain, if it's every 2 years, including racial equity training. So for our ethics under the ordination code, we have to do these things at the conference level. But we could add something pretty explicit in here that is sort of like adheres to, especially if we have a policy, this X policy, right, around more than boundary training is what I hear you saying. Boundary training is great, but boundary training is like on a tiered level. So you have workers who are in an open space with 30 children together. That's one level. Then you have multiple levels. You want this to be a comprehensive working with children kind of process. I think that's really important. And we probably need to find out more specifics. Number one, what's in the policy, if there's something already covered that we can name in here, or simply add something, either from the conference or the insurance board, because that's sort of a given. It's usually on the HR side before you're hiring someone with, the HR policy that you have to do this. And then these are the job duties that you're required to do. So we could name it in job qualifications, but we probably need to get with the HR committee and ask if there's something explicit or if we need to add something. So that's a great point.
I would feel better knowing that it's under job qualifications. It just seems like another check and balance. If something goes wrong, that this is there, that the HR committee addressed that. I mean, you don't have coaches, you don't let your kids go to a team that the coach hasn't gone through boundary, training and, has all those things in a row. So not that she doesn't, and I'm sure that the conference is good at checking that, but I would feel better if there's something in there to address that.
Yeah, I think that's great.
And I think then it would need to be something like willingness to complete said training, right? Like, we're not asking her to, she already does have the boundary training for our church, but that's the kind of thing that you get trained for once you're hired for the job. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Because the only other thing I think, Liz, you'd be talking about is like a teaching license, which is not.
No, yeah. I agree with you, Laura. I think that it's once you get hired, we want you to do this. Yeah.
Right. And comply with the conference. I mean,
Right.
Again, yes, they're going to say you have to do this, but they're not going to retract your ordination if you have, so saying it here means complying with and whatever the particular policy of First Plymouth would be.
Well, they wouldn't take away your ordination, but I was on the ministry team of the association for 6 years. They talked ad nauseum about boundary training for the ordained people. Lay people like me just had to sit there and listen to it, but they were very sticklers for it. And it's a big deal. So if she's ordained in the association, they will keep track of her boundary training. And it goes way beyond children. They include financial boundaries. They talked about internet policies. They talked about counseling. It's a bigger deal than what people go through to take care of kids at church.
Maybe instead of a job qualification, it's in the essential duties and responsibilities. And an item that says something like follows and adheres to all conference and church policies relevant to the position or something like that. because that covers the church employee handbook, the boundary training that we all do who work with children, and the conference requirements as well.
Mhm.
We
Like a
understand
number
where
13,
where you're coming from, Liz.
a number
Well,
13.
When I worked at Children's Hospital and I was in the business office of the psychiatry department, I had to be fingerprinted because I was working around children. So they're different levels.
Well, that's why a
That is
general
nothing.
statement, that just says understands and complies with all conference and church requirements for the position. That just makes it a general statement rather than start specifically saying exactly what is entailed. That way, if those requirements change, the job description doesn't have to change.
Right.
Anyway, just a suggestion.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay. I think what I'll do is I'll take this back with these suggestions. No, Jenny, do you want to work on them first, or Carol? And then send them to the HR committee?
Yeah, that's
and
fine.
say- And then as long as we do an email vote by June 13th, I'd feel pretty good about it, since now that you've seen it.
Yeah, it'd be great
Unless-
to do this like tomorrow. If Pat,
Mhm.
you're getting all these notes, if you'll send me kind of the notes that you have from this meeting, then I'll finalize that, send it out to the HR committee one more time. As long as they say, yes, looks great, I'll send it back to you and we should be good to go.
No, but which part was changed that you wanted to include about the training? Which bullet was that?
I think Carol recommended adding a 13th
13.
Add 13.
here on the duties.
Pat, it's item 13 added to the duties and responsibilities
Okay,
that says something about understands and complies with all conference and church policies relevant to the position.
okay, church policies. Okay.
Yeah,
What is it?
and Jenny, if you'll work with some of the exact terminology of that would be helpful.
Yeah, yes, I mean, so right now for
That just gives you the gist of
it's
what I
the
would
gist.
recommend.
Yeah, and it's a general enough, I mean, I agree, we don't need to be changing a job description every year. Because right now the conference, at any point, they're gonna add
Right.
multiple kinds of trainings. We just want to make sure, and I'll deal with the HR. We need to make sure that our policies are firm. The conferences are firm. Ours are a little bit loosey-goosey when it comes to
Yeah.
employee
Anyway, that's why I was trying to
training.
make a general statement.
General. Yeah, so we can
rather
go ahead
than
and pass
specific.
it and catch up. Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
Carol, is that close? Can you see that?
Yeah, that's like I said, Jenny has the opportunity to tweak the words, but that is
Okay.
definitely the thought that I was trying to put in place.
All right. I was going to go looking for missing periods while I was here, but we may need to move on.
There are some other little details like down in the core competencies. Self-development and team orientation, the first word of the next sentence is not capitalized in those two, and it is in the other three.
You like this word right here?
Mm-hmm.
Just little stuff like that.
You want demonstrates to be capped?
Well, only if you're going to keep the others capitalized. They either all need to be capitalized or they
Yeah,
all
and
need to be uncapitalized.
Yes.
That spacing is
Miss
weird.
Westfall.
Maybe the spacing just looked weird on your screen.
That's a
Yeah,
PDF
the,
problem, I'm afraid. I think. I'm sorry, where did this?
It also looks like the font changes at some point, but I'm not sure about that.
Could have. You want a period there, Carol? After ordination does that? There's a period there.
I just want a period
there,
after
period.
all of them or a period after none of them.
Dang,
Is that
this
okay with you, Laura?
This is like a Zoom meeting at work. Okay.
Yes, definitely. Preach it, Carol. Consistency in the document.
Oh, wait a minute. There was, oh, we still have to tweak the 3 and 5 thing here, don't we? Which we're not going to do tonight. We'll do that later.
Good.
And I wonder if I can delete that. Woohoo! Oh, it won't let me do it.
Close the text box. Make the text box smaller to move the X
Oh,
over.
I did that. Well, I want the X over there, right? All right.
There you go.
All right.
Okay,
Okay.
I don't.
It's 10 after 7.
I didn't mean for us to do the copy editing online. I just wanted to comment that it needed to be done.
Okay, with those changes, we'll come back to you before June 13th with an email vote on the final job description. How's that? Now then, I'm going to put a motion before the church. I'm going to let Alex choose who makes that motion, just because it seems symbolic to me. Who would move that she be called in? Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Doesn't necessarily need to be us. It could be somebody that was with her in the indiscernment process. I think she'd like that. Okay. That meeting is June 13th. Your presence would be welcome. Be following the worship on that Sunday. Things that will be included will be the nominating report. I just want to give you a progress update that almost all of these positions have been filled by the incumbent or somebody new. I still don't know who the vice president is of the Learning Center, but they're looking it up. And we have an opening for a council member. That would be the biggie. If you can think of someone to follow the footsteps of Sandy Clough and Allison Pasternak, that's what we're looking for. Please send us an email. We don't need to discuss it tonight. Just nominate them. Get their permission.
Phil,
and then
can you,
nominate.
Phil,
Yes,
Phil, can you give us back our gallery of people, please?
you can't see yourself? Let me see.
No,
I'm
all we can see is the job description. There you go. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know everything about Zoom.
And I don't know what happened to my picture.
Not do that.
There it is.
Okay. Where's my agenda? Okay. So that's what I wanted to say about the 13th. If you're working on nominating somebody, please get with it. Carol Hainsey, you want the final roster by June the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, something like that?
Yeah, at the latest.
Oh, at the latest. What would be the ideal?
No, whatever was on that list that I sent to you on that email, it's
I thought you
fine.
said, I thought you gave me a range, June 1st through something.
Yeah, I
Assembly.
think, yeah, we need to get it done by then so we have time to create the booklet and get it mailed out to the people who don't have email.
All right. Well, I'm going to California right after church on Sunday, so I'm going to delegate to Elizabeth Satilli. Give her everything I've got, and she will follow up with you. Right, Liz?
Yes,
Okay.
I've got it.
Budget, fiscal year 2021, 2022. Carol Westfall.
Right.
You're
I
on.
want to comment that the due date for all reports for the meeting booklet and slides for the presentations is May 28th
What?
to the office for May 28th.
Well,
Okay.
what do we do if we haven't found anybody who agrees to be on the council? Just leave it vacant?
To be
Keep taking-
determined and get it to Carol as soon as possible, but at least the report structure and format should be to her by then.
Okay.
All right. I have a couple of introductory comments about the budget. And one of them is to reiterate Phil's comment about confidentiality. I'd like the congregation to get this budget through the official communications channels to the congregation. So if we can keep that in mind as we go through the budget tonight, I'd appreciate that. I know Jenny would also, as would any of the staff members or any programs affected by the budget. It's a compressed timeline for the budget. It is always a compressed timeline. It's the reason we have 2 congregational meetings bracketing the summer. We have one in June for the preliminary budget approval, as well as the election of the church leadership. And that is because we have to have a budget to operate on, and our fiscal year begins July 1st. So tonight we are looking at a preliminary budget, a draft budget to be presented to the congregation on June 13th. We've been very fortunate in the last few years. We've had extraordinary circumstances in the operation of the church, and we've been very fortunate to have some extraordinary sources of funds to see us through those extraordinary times. We got a Paycheck Protection Plan loan in excess of $180,000, which was subsequently forgiven and did not have to be paid back. We have an unallocated bequest that we have been using as a budget plug figure for several years. We did not have to use it as originally and initially intended because of the Paycheck Protection Plan funds that we received. It was originally about $120,000, and we have used part of it in this fiscal year to balance the budget. You'll see in the proposed budget for the 2022 fiscal year that we will be finally exhausting that fund, and there will be no more revenue sources from the unallocated bequests. We also were the recipients of foundation and endowment grants to help with our budget. Those are also extraordinary moves on the part of both the foundation and the endowment, because generally speaking, neither one of them funds ongoing operational expenses of the church. So it was clear to the finance committee that we needed to look forward past the 2022 budget year, which is the specific year that I want us to focus on and talk about tonight. But I asked Carol to do an initial pro forma look at what 2023 would look at without any of these extraordinary sources of funds. And she has done that. And on the cover sheet, on the first sheet of the budget that Phil sent to you, you'll see that's in the last column. And if you slide your eye down that column, you'll see the bottom line is roughly $123,000 deficit expected in 2023. And the bottom line of this exercise for first the finance committee and ultimately council is that we have to deal with the challenge that our ordinary revenues, our current revenues, do not cover the current operating expenses of this church. We are, as someone said at the finance committee meeting last week, we are a medium-sized church saddled with a large church facility, which is draining funds from us faster than we can generate current revenues. So there's a small group of people that Jenny has convened. We will meet Thursday of this week to begin to think about changing what I'm thinking about, Jenny, as the paradigm of our church. Changing the way we think about who we are and how we function and how we leverage the assets that we have to, as we move into the future, to set us up for current revenue covering current expenses on an ongoing basis. This is the venue, ultimately council is the venue in which those discussions will take place. But I'd like to posit that tonight is not the time for those discussions because they're premature. We're not ready yet with some ideas and some directions and some principles and some guidelines for the council to discuss. But we will be coming back to you with some of those things to thrash through, knowing that it's incumbent on us to take some of these steps if we are going to remain viable in the long term as a church. Jenny, do you want to weigh in with any more comments on that?
I think you said it very well. I think this is obviously not the time, but it is the time to be thinking about your own role as a leader. You know, every season calls for different kinds of leadership as a group and as you personally. So you might have been the person who is like, you know, just listening and Laura is always, I'm new. I don't really know. I grew up here, but I don't really understand this. Right. So that is one role that you can play, you know, but that now, you know, and now we all know, right? So it takes a different level of discernment. What does it mean to be a part of the collective whole? And I'm just picking on Laura. Laura has the most amazing questions and drives, you know, a lot of positive discernment, but it takes each of us to play kind of our holistic self and bring ourselves to the table, because at the end of the day, each of us, and I'm not even a voting member of council, right? But each of us really we've been lifted up and named from our congregation as members to represent the body. So it takes each of us to discern these decisions. And I know that we will. The challenge is also such an amazing opportunity. So in Carol's depiction of where we are, it's letting us know that there is a great challenge before us, but there are equally more opportunities. So equal and more opportunity for us to grow and live into the fullness of who we are. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you, Jenny. My proposal when this budget goes to the congregation is to not include that last column of 2023, but to say to the congregation the things that I said to you tonight about the challenge going forward of changing the way we think and the way we operate so that current revenues cover current expenses. The reason I would not recommend putting this particular column out at this time is that it is so iffy. It is truly a pro forma guess, and I don't think we're ready to be held to any of these specific numbers yet. I asked Carol to do it just to get a sense of the order of magnitude of the opportunity, Jenny, that is ahead of us. Okay. So the budget itself for 2022 is just slightly over $1 million in both revenues and expenses. It represents about a 7% increase in revenues over Carol's pro forma look at the 2021 actuals. But it's slightly less than the approved budget that we started with for 2021. The couple of points I like to lift up for you. Under revenues, the third line down where it says unallocated bequests, Carol is projecting that we will have used $34,000 in the unallocated bequests by the end of this fiscal year to balance the budget. That leaves $80,000 and change for use in the 2022 budget. Should we need to use either more or less of those funds to balance this year's budget, that could have a small change in that line item for the 2022 budget.
Hey, Carol. I
Yes.
can see you're looking at a piece of paper, I think, but can anybody tell me what page of the PDF this information is on?
I'm sorry. It's
That's
the
okay. 30 to 20?
20,
Thanks,
20,
Andy.
20.
yeah, it's the front page of the budget.
It's also in the PDF, which is what I think she's looking at. It's page 20.
Right. And I'm going back to my inbox to find it.
It's the
Got it.
same.
Okay, thanks.
Have you got it? Okay.
Carol, can I just ask you a quick question? That the one line I don't get is the intentional fundraising. You've got $10,000.
I will talk about that.
Okay, good.
we've lost the history on that intentional fundraising because we've had so many years in the pandemic world. But the last budget we approved before the pandemic had $40,000 in intentional fundraising. And the idea was that stewardship should be something that happens throughout the year, not just once in the spring, and that we take other opportunities through the year to raise additional revenues for the church. And the original thought that year was the foundation Community Caring Awards were going to be a Gallapalooza, and we would raise some of the funds for that. That obviously went away with the pandemic, so you can see we've been carrying a zero on that line. The finance committee thought we would start small on this with $10,000, with the idea that some event or some special fundraiser would happen during the course of this budgeting year to help balance the budget, and also to make sure we had enough funds in the budget. And this will lead into another comment on the expenses, to make sure that we have cost of living and merit increases for all of our staff. We do not want to balance the budget on the backs of our staff. So that was the thinking with the intentional fundraising. Don't exactly know what that will look like yet, but it's a pretty modest objective based on where we started with that. If you look at the third column from the left, where it says 2021 approved budget, the very last line is a salary adjustment pool of $5,000. If you read across to the actual through April, which is the next column, and the projection, both of those are zeros. That does not mean that the staff did not get any increases. What it means is that when we gave the staff their wage and salary increases, they were folded into the specific expenditures for that department rather than charged to this line item on the budget of the salary adjustment pool. And our conclusion for the 2022 budget was that we would build them into the department numbers from the very beginning. So that's why that line will not be there in next year's budget as well. Carol, can you give us a quick update on where we are on pledges?
As of right now, we're at about $476,000. We have had some more pledges come in the last couple days that haven't gone in.
Okay.
But that's about where we are right now.
Okay, and at the finance committee meeting last Thursday, Grover Wren, who represents stewardship on the finance committee, seemed to think that was about where we usually are at this period in the stewardship campaign. So what questions, comments do you have as we prepare to take this draft budget forward to the congregation?
Carol, thanks. Can you, I think I might have just missed the reasoning behind us being 122,000 in the hole for the 2023 budget.
We have no Paycheck Protection Plan loan funds. We have exhausted the unallocated bequests that we were granted several years ago, and we will not get either foundation or endowment funds for the ongoing operations of the church.
Okay, thank you.
So if you'll notice, the expenditure line is just slightly increased 2023 over 2022. It's the revenue line that is the challenge.
Yeah. So revenue for us then needs to be increased pledges or rental income. What other revenue options are there for us?
The focused intentional fundraising.
Oh yeah, okay.
And I'm not going to, I don't want to put anybody in an awkward position by saying some of the other things that we might be able to look at, but the church has some pretty substantial assets that we can think about using differently.
Okay.
And that's all I really want to say right now. Okay, guys?
Okay.
The
Carol,
point
can I-
is to start thinking about it now.
Yeah. Carol, can I just ask a question? If you scroll down to one of the groups, for instance, Christian education, and the red letters that say PR, PRE, and PRO, and
Personnel and program.
okay, I just wondered. Thank you.
We always want to look at what percentage of our total expenditures are personnel costs. And you'll notice at the bottom of each
Right, that you break it
department
down.
page, it's personnel and program. So that just tells you which of the expenditures is which.
Okay, thanks.
I love it when you ask me a question I know the answer to. Thank you.
Well, I had
Be a lot.
a question too about Anthony's departure and that salary reduction at this point. Is it imagined that we would rehire that position, or is that a position that we could do without?
Such a lovely, beautiful question, Deborah.
Isn't that such a good one, Jenny?
Love it.
I think you'd
Yeah.
love
I'll answer this from my perspective, Carol, and then I'll let you talk about numbers. So
Okay.
that, numbers don't lie. So cutting the budget and making sure we have a balanced budget means a total review of assets, which is personnel as well. So the current status of our personnel means that we have a parish visitor who's not an ordained minister, but who does a lot of pastoral care.
Mhm.
So she will continue to do her amazing, wonderful parish visiting pastoral care and probably take on more responsibilities while we assess a new configuration, which is very, very new. It was already very new, and it's a sudden sort of, no kind of lead up time to assess, a new configuration, which is not helpful, but it's the way it is in ministry. You kind of have to keep things until next steps. So we will reassess in the fall once we know what the final configuration of our assets are. This preliminary budget before we close a pledge campaign every year kind of creates a little bit of anxiety, and then you finish the campaign and then you pass the budget in another congregational meeting.
Yeah.
So this is so that we are prepared. As Carol said, we need to be forward thinking. I think I was born forward thinking out of the womb. I'm thinking like 3 years, 5 years. What is this? What does it need to look like? But unfortunately, all you can do is meet the moment. And so the pandemic was one moment, having this amazing staff is another moment. Knowing that we're reopening and looking to a new kind of day, we have to reassess who we are right now as we come back and as we reemerge, like rebirth. It's not coming back to who we were.
Yeah.
So part of this time, part of the honesty is, we really couldn't afford a position going forward in the same robust fashion that we would replace Anthony at the same level. But hopefully, as we reassess and then our assets rebalance and we renegotiate who we are and make sure that we're doing our best to, create those revenue streams, we will choose the best possible scenario. So there will be, that's why we have funds there. Those funds are sort of a token representation of this is an important position in this
Okay.
congregation's life. It will not be tomorrow. It will be sort of thinking and discerning, with visioning and, budget and visioning are two things, but they have to communicate. And, they are one and the same, as you know. So we'll have to reassess where we are and then who fits, who we are and what level. And as Lois takes on some of that work, it will also be negotiating, well, what is the whole now? What is the whole now with Alex, myself and Lois, and where really do we want to, spend those assets? So there's no perfect picture right now because we're just not ready to even move on that.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. That was helpful.
If you look at the salaries and wages line in the community life, you'll see it's pretty constant. We're showing a drop in 2022 of $10,000, and that represents some of the reconfiguration that Jenny was mentioning. And to the number of years that we're looking out, Carol Hainsey and I have already discussed the potential of doing a 3 to 5 year look this fall, after we have a little bit more information about 2021 and where we're going to come out on the revenues for 2022. But we agree that it needs to be longer than just a 1 more year look out. That was just our first pass at the magnitude of the challenges and opportunities that we have going forward. But we agree with you, Jenny. We need to look farther out. We need a 5-year plan.
Carol, I'd like to ask you some questions. I went through, like on page 23, you're right now on community life. I had a question about when we talk about salaries and wages, how many staff persons are we talking about deriving a salary from community life?
2, pastoral care associate and parish visitor.
Okay.
Those are listed at the bottom of the page.
And then on page 24, when we get to worship and arts, how many staff persons are we talking about for salaries in that category?
Well, 2 salary, director of music and technology and worship, and the organist, and then a sound technician.
Okay.
Wages as well.
Page 25, the church council, how many persons are deriving a salary from that?
Jenny, I'm going to let you talk to this a little bit because this is Jenny's salary plus pastoral residents, but I believe they have their own line.
Yeah,
Yes,
I think they are
have
not in salary. Yeah, they have
They
their
have their
own
own
line.
line.
So all the senior pastors are kind of all allotted in the under council.
So this is senior pastor.
Okay. And then the business administration, how many people are deriving a salary from that category?
Well, I cut that page off. Carol, can you quickly, I didn't print out that page because it was an extra page. Can you quickly fill us in on that?
At the
Yeah,
top of
so-
page 27.
So that, Bob, that includes my position as Director of Administration. It includes the Communications Coordinator, which is Amy Turner. It includes the Office Coordinator, who is Lisa Medina. It includes the Facilities Manager, who is now James Trotter, and 2 part-time custodial workers.
Carol, 2 or 3, that was a question we ended up with after this morning's facilities team meeting. We didn't completely get the correct number there.
Yeah, and I have to say, I don't completely get the correct number either.
Okay.
Currently, we have our facilities manager and we have 1 part-time custodian.
Okay.
We are, as of tomorrow, we're interviewing 2 other potential part-time
Okay.
custodians. So it's either going to be 2 or 3 part-time custodians, just simply because we have to cover 7 days a week and up to 15 hours a day.
So it would be 2 or 3 part-time custodians, but all within the parameters of this budget number.
That's correct.
Okay.
Carol, I have another question. Last time we had a discussion about the roof. I hate to bring it up, but particularly the area in the southeast corner of the staircase that is an urgent need of repair. And then someone said, but the rest of the roof at some point needs to be replaced. So where is the allocation to just repair the part of the roof that is most urgent in need of repair?
That will come from some special funding, the brand fund most likely, or endowment. That's one of the things that this church asset group that's beginning to meet on Thursday will start to discuss, is a way to create some kind of ongoing sinking fund for these major capital expenditures required in the future. The roof and the parking lot come to mind right away. But they would not be in the ongoing operating budget, current revenues versus current operating expenses.
If we can come up with at least a short-term, very quick fix to stop the roof leaking on that southeast corner of the building, that if it's a very easy fix, we can cover some of that under the repairs and maintenance budget in the business administration department. But if it gets to be anything substantial, as Carol said, we would apply for funding from the brand funds or look at some other sources.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good questions, Bob. Thank you. It helps anticipate what the questions we'll need to be ready to answer when we present this to the congregation. So I appreciate it.
Has there already been a change in the senior pastor salary? It looks like, I mean, it looks like those numbers have gone down since 2020. Is that so?
Let me look at that. Hold on just a minute.
Yeah, I'm on the downhill slope, Deb. It's like the pandemic, like boom. And now, like you're not opening fast enough, boom. No, I can speak for myself. Who receives that salary has not changed.
Okay, it's not changed because
I'm crossing my fingers, so please do it with me.
So Deborah, the reason for that reduction was because previously the teaching minister's salary was included in this department. And then last year we introduced a new budget for the youth department, and Eric's salary is covered. It moved out of this department into the youth department.
okay, because that just seems like something that somebody would notice that if that is just personnel for senior minister's salary, then why is it so different this for the 2022 budget? So good. Okay.
Yeah. You'll see it on the youth page, the salaries and wages.
I thought maybe we had already been cutting staff salaries. Whoa.
That's true. That actually changed last year, right? From the
Correct.
everything
correct.
feels like it's hard to know what year, right? I mean, we're in this new place, so it's hard to determine.
Yeah.
We've had a whole year of just in the box.
Got it.
That changed, and unfortunately, and Eric and I laugh about this because he's so great, but we had these great, amazing thoughts. Right? Let's put the youth budget and the program like in the operating budget, and now of course we're like slash. Good luck with those funds. I mean, this is just the nature of planning ahead, and this is why 5-year planning helps us get out of the roller coaster.
Yeah.
When you actually assess your needs and your assets and you're aligned appropriately, you're not cutting staff every year. You're not piddling down $1,000 here and there. And we don't want to be, we are not that kind of community. We have greater assets and greater, ability to plan for progress. So we're going to get to a healthier place where you're not going to see that every year, Deb. Like, oh, why are we in this seesaw? We're going to, hopefully be in a trajectory of this. But no, they haven't slashed me yet by that much. So keep on setting up the prayers.
Other questions?
It's a sobering report.
What about Abby? Is Abby? Yeah. Where is Abby's? Is she in the worship and arts? No.
No.
She was until the end of June. So Abby's position has been cut.
It has. Okay.
Which you'll see, yes, which is my complete 100% call and working with Joel, in assessing the needs and assessing what we can do and assessing long-term strategic goals.
Yeah.
So Abby is not in the budget. Her position has been kind of written out of the budget. Children's ministries, you'll see children's ministries, of course, is under Alex. And then Joel and Ricky, will assume music programming. And so most likely, Abby, for those of you who don't know maybe, or who do, but Abby directs the handbell choir.
Yeah.
So most likely, and Joel is still navigating this, but most likely Ricky will be assuming the handbell choir and any kind of other adult programming. And again, that's sort of just what we can do, who we are and what we need. That's probably the hardest thing. The hardest thing for me in being sort of the executive in terms of personnel is knowing, when we have to eliminate a position, it's not a position, it's a person and a position. But that's kind of the hard reality of making sure that we're right sized. And so that we don't kind of overreach, and that we assess needs. Last year, we put Joel's position to music and technology. So worship and technology. Little did we know that we would need technology 110% and no choir. But that's probably the hardest thing from this for me. I'm just going to speak for myself. I know there are a lot of difficult things, but the hardest thing for a pastor and for, I think, a community is when you have to say the no is to an individual. Abby, of course, is very wonderful and gracious and is in a really great place, I think, in her own life to be able to sail through getting married and new jobs. And that's not really, we can celebrate that. We would have had to make this decision even if that weren't the case. And I think that's one of the sobering things that Bob is stating. These are sobering moments, but my job, and I hope all of our jobs, is to make sure that we don't have these kinds of situations very often where we're sort of, oh, let's do these amazing things, a kind of more of a helter-skelter, if you will, way. But we have advanced planning and we know who we are, what our assets are for not only this year, but for the next several years going forward, so that we can both repair the roof because we know our greater asset that base for a capital campaign or something, and we know our pledge base, so that we're not in a position of, moving people's lives around. But yeah, Deb, that's probably the most understated in the budget. You don't see a line that says, let go of a person. You just don't see, specific things. And that's part of a narrative of where we are. So if that comes up, I will obviously address that, if there are any questions, letting our congregation know, this is kind of where we are.
Yeah. So we don't make those announcements. Like, we don't say, it's just not something you do, right?
No. If the person wants to, usually you don't make those personnel kind of announcements. This person is, unless somebody has a call and they say, hey, I'm being called somewhere else, I'm going to offer a resignation. But when you don't rehire a position, it's like sizing down. You don't say to the congregation, other than through financial statements and conversation in a church. It's going to happen in the congregational meeting and the pastor will address it to the best of my ability. But again, it's a sobering fact, but I hope, sounds terrible, but it's also a hopeful kind of beginning for understanding that we are trying to live within and resource our congregation in a way that really fits the needs and the resources.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
One of the other ongoing conversations at the financial committee, as well as throughout the church, is the difference between a large church and a medium-sized church. In a large church, you typically have the financial resources to hire staff to do a lot of the programming things that the congregation wants to have done. A medium-sized church or a small church needs to rely on volunteers to do a lot of those things. And many of us can remember when the bell choir was volunteer-led, not led by a paid staff member. And that's one of the assets, as Jenny mentioned, that's one of the assets that this small group will begin to start talking about, is how do we leverage the assets of the church?
It's also, entrepreneurial, modern 21st century church where ownership, so I think I said this maybe in the finance committee and some other places, but we still largely run our operations and our ministry on an 80s model of church. If that, kind of rings a bell, where it's sort of, big church. It's almost like, think about Reagan, think about, our governance, money is everywhere. You can do what you want. There's enough, and there are programs and there are opportunities and funds. Part of living into the 21st century also means creative entrepreneurial spirit. Like the congregation, like we have to begin thinking about one of the assets, our building, right, is also a liability if we don't share it, if we don't have creative imagination about what is this building for? Who is it for? It's not just a rental space, right? That's one thing, but that's really only going to go so far. What kind of partnerships do we have? Like, what kind of arts? Who's living through that building and giving it new life? So there are so many, this new paradigm shift means thinking outside of the box, but it also means pushing. Like, we don't have the luxury of just thinking outside of the box and then coming right back to square one. Oh, let's think about the outside the box, and we have a report, and then we just don't do anything. But we said that we had this meeting. So you have to really take risks and push ourselves to re-emerge with new insight into who we are, because we'll be this same congregation if we don't lift off the page. So some of those things have to do with funds, but a lot of the major assets that we have in our congregation are human assets. So we have to start thinking about how we use who we are, to the betterment of the church. It's not enough with one and done. Oh, I'm doing a meeting and we're contributing. That's still an 80s model. Like, let's sit around and talk about something, write it down, and then we're done. Some of that actually detracts from future growth and mission. So I think it will take all of us, and I'm hoping that more participants will engage in these kinds of community conversations. But we have to start with sort of base one, which is numbers. Like, this is the sobering truth. There's transparency. There's no hiding the fact that this is who we are, and this is what the community has offered up for us to work with. And then we take that and we create some kind of future out of either the little or the much that we have.
Yeah.
And we have an amazing community. We are so on fire with growth and possibility, but it will take, 1, 2, 3 years.
Yeah.
Phil and Carol, since we're the family sitting around the kitchen table talking about our budget, let me bring up an issue that we may want to consider deferring. We have not contracted with SEC for the EOP program. In fact, Carol, Warren, and I are scheduled to meet with our attorney this Friday to just go over and try to streamline the contract before we would send them back. That could be deferred until fall, when we know for sure what the budget for the year is going to be and what the expenditures are going to be. I realize that the endowment or foundation, one of those organizations has agreed to pay for it, but different projects are coming forth. I can think of the media that we want to put screens up in the church to accommodate Zoom meetings and so forth. That's going to be another expenditure. And at some point, endowment and foundation are going to throw their hands up and say, we can't cope with all these requests that we're getting for projects. So if it pleased the group, we'd be willing to defer any action on that till fall.
I'd like to weigh in on that, if I might. The actual study would not take place until the fall in any case, after the church has fully reopened. And in terms of a 5-year look, a 3 to 5 year look at what we really need to be able to step up to, I think it would be well if we had an idea of what this security plan for the church would entail to fold into that look. So that's just my initial response there.
I have one other comment on that. And I appreciate what you're saying, Bob. The other thing is, we have investigated the funding that could be available through grants for this sort of work. And it could be that we could postpone it, but it would mean postponing it for about a year and apply for those grant funds to see if we could cover the entire cost that way. But it would mean postponing the project for about a year.
Is that a facilities team initial discussion, Carol and Bob, do you think?
Yeah, I think it could be.
And then from facilities team to council, since council has approved the study, but should facilities team take the first relook at it?
Well, to do that, you're going to have to explain to facilities team why you're doing it, which gets down to what we've been discussing regarding budgetary deficits projected for the future. So that would be rather difficult to go back to them without having to get into a little bit of, why are you requesting that you postpone it to fund the whole thing through grants that have to be delayed for a year?
Bob, I would suggest that we wait until after the meeting that we have this week on Thursday with the endowment and the foundation to talk about First Plymouth assets overall. Jenny and Carol Westfall and I, Denise Brown, Harry Adair, and a couple others are going to be at that meeting. And maybe we wait until we have that meeting to see sort of what the direction is, where people want to head. And then we will know a little better if it's something that we want to delay or not.
Okay.
Before we start discussing specifics.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, all
So,
right.
so Carol, would you suggest that we proceed and have our meeting anyway with Jeff this Friday?
Yeah, I think we should go ahead and have that meeting so we know where we stand on the contract.
Okay.
The amount of money we have to pay for Jeff is minimal compared to what the grant was from the endowment. So I think we go ahead with that.
Sure. Okay. I'm not trying to stir up trouble. I'm just trying to think ahead and,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anything else on the budget?
So the Finance Committee has brought this motion to the council that this budget be passed. Any further discussions of Carol, or we will vote on the budget that you have in your packet? And all the periods are correct and all the commas are correct and it looks good.
I haven't looked for split infinitives yet. Let me take another 30 minutes.
Not many infinitives in that budget. Well,
All right, you guys can keep razzing me. I've been razzed for this stuff my whole life.
all of those who are in favor of sending this budget to the congregation with our endorsement, please raise a hand where I can see it, like next to your face. That'd be good. I see 100% of those present voting yes. So are we ready to move on to other items of business?
Thank you all. Thank you for your questions and comments. I appreciate that.
Thank you for your hard work, Carol. Very good.
Yes.
Well, and Carol Hainsey and the Finance Committee, I do not begin to do this by myself.
Well done.
Well done. Thank you, Carol. Carol Hainsey, do you have a report or anything we should know as a council?
I have a couple of things I'll go over quickly. The church's COVID task force is meeting on Friday, and we are hoping to finalize some plans for starting to reopen the church. And I'm sure Jenny will have more to say about that. We are looking forward to welcoming small groups and some rental groups back into the church in June, which is just around the corner. So we are working hard on getting all our protocols in place to do that. Just a heads up, so people are aware of it. One of the rental groups that's going to be coming to the church is a group called Pedal Heads, which some of you who have been around for a while might recognize. They were last at the church, I think 3 or 4 years ago. It's a group, a kids camp where they ride bicycles in the parking lot. They teach kids how to ride bikes and be responsible. Very little interaction inside the building except using some restrooms and having some water breaks. But they're going to be starting there in June and they will be there for 2 months. And we just received a check for $9,000 for that. So those are the sort of groups we're really excited to welcome in because they have very minimal impact in the building, but yet they're a great source of revenue for the church. As somebody mentioned earlier, we are working on setting up Zoom rooms for the church. We know that there's a wide spectrum of opinions of people about coming back to the church. Some people want to jump right back in full force. Other people are not quite as excited about coming back into the building with other people. So we're setting up hopefully multiple rooms where groups can meet in person, but there will be a computer with a wide angle camera where we can also Zoom people into the meeting. So you'll have multiple ways of attending meetings, which I think will hopefully accommodate everybody's needs. So we're working on that as well. As we said earlier, we're working on getting the custodial staff in place. We hope everyone will be a bit patient because we have basically had a complete turnover of the custodial staff in this last year. Luckily, Don McLean has been lovely and is still coming in every week or two to help keep things running, which has been great. We're also still working on supporting the stewardship campaign and providing their reports and working on the budget development. And then the last thing I want to bring to everyone's attention is, you may remember a number of months ago, many months ago, we had a proposal from Denver First Nazarene Church next door to us to enter into a parking lot arrangement. And we decided not to do that. And that was communicated to them. They've since been through a number of Zoom meetings and hearings with the Cherry Hills Village Council, and I've attended several of them. And it's a real battle for them to get to where they want to be to sell their property. They have now, as of this week, come up with a new possible parking arrangement with us. They just sent it to me, so I have not really had time to review it. I will be reviewing it, and if it's radically different, I will bring it back to council to have you consider. If it's just a rehash of what it was before, I probably will not. Just so everyone's aware, Brave Church behind us to the south has declined to sign it. So I think I'll take a quick look at it. Actually, not a quick look, a lengthy look at it and see what exactly they're proposing. And then it may come back to you again if it seems like it's a little more palatable than it was before. But they're still trying to sell their property and they're encountering a lot of opposition right now.
How much of their property are they trying to sell?
They're trying to sell, I think it's basically about, they keep changing which parcels they're going to sell, but it's basically a couple acres that is now just their excess parking lot. But the neighborhood village, the neighboring neighborhood, the Covington Village, is strongly opposing it. And those neighbors have come to the church to express their opinion to us that we should not support it. So I think it's something we want to be careful with.
They're opposed to the Nazarene Church selling part of their parking lot?
They do not want them to sell it.
Who are they going to sell it to that would be offensive to the neighborhood?
Well, what they want to do is sell it for residential development, where they would be putting 4 additional homes on that property. And the Covington neighborhood is not supporting that move in any way.
I can see that. Okay.
Yeah.
Raise some revenue for them, wouldn't it? Okay. We don't have anything like that to sell. Okay. Thank you. That's it.
That's it.
Pastor Jenny. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Still here.
Okay.
I'm grand. My report is all of the above that we've already talked about. / Pentecost is Sunday. I know the UCC sort of gets Pentecost, but we are going to get it this year, aren't we? That it is not the birth of the church. The church was sort of around, like the Abrahamic faith that we borrowed has been around, but we are living into a new moment, right? We are coming back together. We are claiming our own new rebirth. So enjoy Pentecost. We are in the throes of just thinking about coming back to church. I mean, we are kind of knowing that hope, right? We know that hope is around the corner, and we are sort of like lassoing right now and throwing it out there. And every other day, like one of the staff gets it, and brings back an amazing sort of hopeful narrative. But no, we're really excited. I think right now my focus is on more infrastructure stability, like the executive functioning of the church, while trying to create some hopeful opportunities for us to kind of grow together and birth something new and different. And I think that's something to name as many opportunities that we have to say, we're coming back to something new and different. I think we should do that. It's not that we will dismiss grief and lament and just pretend that the last year didn't happen. We have to hold all of those things simultaneously. And if not the church, you know, there's not another group of faith-filled people who can do that. I recently, I think, you know, with vaccinations, I spent a lot more time with people, which is wonderful. Visits and even just a lot of, you know, mental health, people reaching out for mental health support. We have I added 2 new people to tree houses today, brand new people in our community. And so to come and be a brand new person is one thing. To come and be a brand new person and to say, hey, pastor, please, I would love to join a treehouse. I mean, that's a really intimate, intentional move to be a part of community. So there are a lot of people like that we will need to work hard to kind of bring into the fold when we're coming back together. Summer schedules, the staff are really excited about the tree houses. Probably some of you, many of you are in a tree house and have been planning your worship. We've already been recording and rehearsing with people in the sanctuary. We keep on talking about like a blooper reel, you know, to show, which would be great. We definitely should have had one for the staff for this whole year, but I'm always like the one who's like randomly blurting out something I shouldn't be saying. So I'm like, no, it's off limits. But, you know, it's been one of those true moments. Like, we are human beings. It has been really hard, but there is so much hope and possibility and love and laughter, even if you just kind of crawl out of the sanctuary on a Sunday because you're staring at the wall. You know, there is still so much beauty in the fact that it's okay to be human. And so I think that coming back to this new beginning with Pentecost and coming back to the building, we're giving ourselves the opportunity to start over. Like, who is the church, right? Well, the church should be X, right? We should be the place for transparency and honesty and vulnerability. And I think people want that, but so often we become the church that we should be, the church that knows the rhythm and the routine and knows everyone, right? But we have this opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to let all of that go, right? And with stability and with grace, we're going to say, we're going to lead out of the places of vulnerability, even out of pain, right? Because leading out of pain comes laughter and tripping over yourselves. And then you just decide, well, this is all too much. We just have to let it go and be human. And so I think Spirit calls each of us, and we can't do it alone, right? The wholeness of Pentecost, right? Of the Spirit, it's sort of this disorientation, like, what is happening here? You know, and people decide it's one thing. And we should be so disoriented by joy and giving up that we are grounded by something that we can only get from each other, which I think is the positive spirit of community. And I think we lack it so much right now, and everyone does. So coming together gives us a restart in a way that I think can be fueled by the power that we already have known, whether it's in grief or loss or in celebration or in worship, but it will be life-giving and life-saving for those who haven't known it. I mean, I've talked to people, a few people recently who have so much pain and trauma from the church, right? And they're looking for, they're just so desperate during this time that they're coming back to this place, not our church, but the church that was the root of their devastation, the root of their whole lives unraveling. And so they're so desperate for some kind of love that they're coming back to that place. So we have this opportunity to actually be the church. So I'm excited. I know we're all sort of ready for the church to open, and I am so past ready for the church to open. But I hope that all of us can find that, muster sort of the energy and the courage and the honesty to come back, not back as in going backwards, but to come to this place with a hopefulness and sort of, you know, a truth that will not let you go, right? Don't let it go. The thing you've been hoping and hungering for, that's really possible. Don't decide when you come back, oh, well, I'm going to go into my new rhythm and the politic of church or the thing of church. Like, bring that hope and hunger with you. That's transformation. And I think that's the only thing that the 21st century kind of demands Either that, or we're just sort of like talking points and coming in and meeting our own needs. So I have hope that we will get there. And even if we're having this really sobering conversation about a budget, it only tells one part of the story. There's so much more to that story that I think we will sort of learn, and the light lives even under those pages. So I think my message, to myself even, it's to be resonant, to be a person who, be resonant for someone else, no matter, just meet people where they are in the journey. And if you're the mess, be the mess and let the other person be your joy and remind you of love, but be as authentic as we can right now. It's going to take you being authentic for someone else to have permission to share their own pain. Pretending that you're okay, or pretending that everything's perfect, or pretending that, sometimes you have to, right? Because you can only make it if you pretend that things are great. But sometimes you need to just be that mess so that someone else can say, oh, man, oh my gosh, maybe I'm actually better off than you. And they feel better about it. I think we just all have to live authentically, know that Spirit is leading the way, and that there will be wholeness, in our community. That's my pastor, ramble response to you. I don't have a whole lot of figures or this is what we're doing. It's just being the church, and I'm ready to actually see the church now. So thank you all.
Don't make me be authentic. You won't like me when I'm authentic. No, who's
Come on, Phil.
That was who was that guy's name? Come on, you watch cartoons. The Hulk. It's the Hulk, right?
Oh,
I have a question for the staff and Liz Massatelli, if you don't mind. I'm looking at the agenda for last year's meeting, and in June last year, we had a covenant ratification from WISE, and we had a report from Creation Justice. Is anybody aware of anything like that needs to be done in June from Mission Team or anybody else? I don't want to overlook anybody. Liz, do you remember from Mission Team they got anything going on? Nobody's got. Okay.
I can't think of anything.
I'm going to send you and Carol a draft agenda since Carol's already asked me for one. Have you heard of something? Your chance. What you hearing? Deborah, you're always hearing something. Raise your hand. Go off mute. Tell me what's up.
Did you just say, Deborah, you always have something?
Yeah, I did say that.
I'm getting the reputation already. All
What have
right.
you heard?
I will say, what was up with us finding about Anthony's resignation on Facebook before we heard it from our own church? I thought that was not well thought out. And I've heard that from a few other people, but
I know. I mean, that's sort of when he's going. We actually were. So things are confidential when it comes to personnel.
Yeah.
But what we did do on behalf of First Plymouth, I actually reached out to Sue Art and said, give me your timeline. We won't, we're not going to go. And Anthony, he basically told me, and then I worked around the conference's schedule and Anthony's schedule when he wanted to tell the staff. And then Anthony decided on his own to just tell Facebook and the world before the church. So that, sometimes people they don't communicate, with their friends, and they want their friends to know before they're, it's a personal thing. I think it's always, on both sides, it could be kind of weird and painful, but that's Anthony's decision when he released it on Facebook. We did not release it on Facebook.
Yeah.
But we had a timeline, and individuals, they can do what they feel like doing.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
He had his own timeline.
And that's okay,
And that's okay. No, it just raised a lot of people were just confused. Like, well, when I first read it, I thought, oh, he's taking that as a part-time job. So I didn't get that he was leaving our church. And that was, a lot of people were just very surprised when that happened.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was equally surprised, but.
All right.
Thanks.
I'm sorry. I'm sure that was very difficult kind of time for you. Not fun.
It's Facebook.
Thanks.
It's evil. I did tell you guys that's why I don't participate. Last December, Elizabeth learned about the death of her brother on Facebook before the family called her and told her.
Oh, geez.
So, people just rush to share news with other people.
Yeah.
First Plymouth is kind of like that. We're almost competitive in our reading of news and sharing it with other people.
Well, I think of one thing is, you know, there's not a whole lot of boundary. You know, social media doesn't really allow for a lot of boundaries. And so probably Anthony desired to share with people he loved and friends, like 1,000 people across. And that was his way of doing that, which is personal agency, not probably wanting to hurt any First Plymouth professional. But when it's married on social media, right? And so that's one of those things about you just make your best, not best decision. And it kind of hurts someone in the meantime. But thankfully, we completely support Anthony and we're so happy for him. And we will be just fine. But nobody ever wants that to receive that kind of news in general. And so we just move on and celebrate, knowing that Anthony's still in our midst, working for the conference in such an amazing position, uplifting so much of the work that First Plymouth already upholds and believes. So personality and subjectivity and feelings are part of that professional dynamic, and social media adds a layer that makes it more complicated. Right? It's one of those moments where you just need social media to not be there. But alas, here we are.
Yes.
We have told him he has to come back and sing for us again.
Well, my treehouse is meeting with him tomorrow to record all our stuff. We didn't know he was leaving. That's true. So I hope he goes through with the sermon.
No, he is.
Okay.
He is. That was one of my first conversations, like all the things after his date for resignation, you know, out of the chute. I'm so sorry to lose you / okay, these are the things coming up. Let's make sure that those are off so that we can actually celebrate you. But yeah, he wants to do that. So it'll be great.
Do you know, so they don't stay in the church, right? And like, obviously they don't stay members of our church. No, because, right. Okay.
Yeah, he is a member actually.
Oh, he is.
Yeah, he's a member. He's also, I mean,
Yeah,
you have to have membership for his standing, which is First Plymouth.
that's right.
Does that mean more than here's your membership on the roll? Probably not. So Anthony will be covering a huge region.
Yeah.
You know, they needed a person because they've got Utah and, you know, just the far flung area. And the sort of the ministry of racial equity and reconciliation is primarily on his plate. So he'll be going to every single church in his first 6 months. And probably for the first year, he will be building relationships. But he knows that First Plymouth is his home. I'm sure he'll be preaching. I told him the pulpit is open. Let me know, you know, when you're in town and able. So we will see him, but it will not be the same relationship.
Yeah. Are we ever going to get to meet the little baby girl?
On Facebook.
Hopefully.
That's right.
Okay. Sorry, just a little sadness. Okay.
Anyone else? Sandy Clough, I've heard everyone else's voice tonight but yours. Just say something so I hear it. Say this is my
I
next
just
song.
kind of on that subject, I just wanted to thank Jenny for the letter we sent out. It provided some clarity for us on the task force as to how we would use Anthony and observe a period of separation, which made a lot of sense. Thank you for that piece of advice. We appreciate it.
Hey, while you're off mute, you're on the Mustard Seed Task Force, right? Do you guys want to
Yes.
make a report at the congregation meeting? I'm sure people would want to know how you doing.
Sure. I will
Talk to
suggest
Dave.
that. I think we're meeting Monday.
Okay. Ask them to put
I will
something together.
suggest that, and I'm sure it'll come up too.
Good.
Just in the natural course of things, that there will be a congregational meeting, and hopefully we will make between now and then considerably more progress. We've got our list down to 5, so I think on Monday we will be hopefully narrowing from 5 to 3 finalists.
We'll give you 10 whole minutes if you want on the agenda. How's that? Is that enough?
Oh,
'Cause
it's
there's not
more
much
than
else. It's much. I mean, It's you and
More
Carol
than
Westfall giving the
You
budget.
just heard the report, Phil. That was about 30 seconds, right, Sandy?
Yeah.
You can stretch it
Well,
out.
hopefully it'll be more than 30 seconds by June 13th.
That's
Well,
right.
remember, the congregation hadn't heard any of the stuff that we've heard here.
True.
All right. Anybody else heard something? Anybody else want to hear something from somebody else? All right. It's been a strange year to be your moderator. I wish I could seen any of you in person over the last year. I don't think I've seen any of you except maybe Jenny back in September in person, but like that problem. With June 13th, we'll pass the gavel. We will have one more meeting since we had said okay to the budget. I see no reason for another council meeting before the 4th Tuesday of June. So I will close you tonight with something of a benediction that was written by the Apostle Paul, my favorite book of the Bible, because it sounds so genuine and it actually sounds like a thank you note written from a very peculiar place, prison, to his friends in Philippi who were on the other side of Europe, knowing that his time was pretty much up. He hadn't finished building Christianity yet, and now he's about to leave the scene and telling them they're going to have to work some things out all by themselves. And here's how he concludes his letter to them. And this is my prayer for you as a church council. I will continue on as your past moderator, so I'm not really leaving. I wish you joy in the Lord always. Again, I say, all joy be yours. Be known to everyone for your consideration of others. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious, but in everything make your requests known to God in prayer and petition with thanksgiving. Then the peace of God, which is beyond all understanding, will guard your hearts and your thoughts in Christ Jesus. And now, my friends, all that is true, all that is noble, all that is just and pure, all that is lovable and attractive, whatever is excellent and admirable, fill your thoughts with these things. Go in peace.
Amen.
Done for tonight. Amen.
Thank you.
Bill, when's the next meeting again? Say that, June
4th Tuesday of June.
June 4th is a Friday.
4th Tuesday of June. Whatever that is. You
Oh,
look
that
it up.
is 1, 2, 3, the 22nd. All
There
right.
you go. June 22nd. Probably by Zoom, unless the COVID task force says we can do something different. Lesson. All right. Bye.
Night. Bye, everyone.
Good night, everybody.